She leaves her life of luxury to be with him, but a hidden secret changes everything. Two opposite worlds. She, the daughter of a powerful family, stifled by expectations. He, an ordinary young man, struggling to save his mother and rebuild his life. An unexpected encounter on a Malibu beach could change everything. What happens when love arises where no one expected it? When the heart challenges fate, wealth, and even family promises. Together, they face challenges, discover secrets that could change their lives forever. But will their love be strong enough? It was a golden afternoon in Malibu. The sun, with its silent majesty, painted the sky in vibrant shades of orange and pink as the ocean gently broke on the white sands of the beach. Ethan, a 25-year-old young man, walked distractedly, his feet sinking into the cold, damp sand. His mind was far away, preoccupied with the uncertainty of the future. He had lost his job at the small workshop where he worked and, as if that weren't enough, his mother, his only family, was gravely ill. He felt powerless, as if the ground were crumbling beneath his feet. On the other side of the beach, Chloe, a 23-year-old young woman, walked with the wind tousling her golden hair. Despite the wealth that surrounded her life, her heart was restless. She had grown up in luxury, molded by her parents' desires, who saw her as a pawn in their grand business plans. Everything in her life was controlled, her studies, her friendships, even the suitors chosen by her family. That afternoon, after a family argument, she had escaped from the imposing mansion to the peace of the beach. Fate, with its own invisible force, made their lives collide unexpectedly. A gust of wind blew Chloe's elegant hat off her head, sending it towards Ethan. He, immersed in his thoughts, barely noticed when the hat landed at his feet. As he picked it up, a gentle yet firm voice called out, "Excuse me, my hat." Chloe smiled, breathless from running, yet maintaining a natural elegance. Ethan turned, meeting the bright eyes of the young woman. She was stunning, but there was something more, a vulnerability hidden beneath that perfection. He smiled shyly as he handed back the hat. "I guess the wind decided you needed a break," he joked. Chloe laughed, the sound like the gentle sea in the background, natural and light. She was used to men trying to impress her with showiness, but there was something about Ethan that made her relax. He was different, genuine. "Maybe it's right," Chloe replied, looking around. "This place really does bring peace." Ethan nodded, his eyes turning to the sea. There was a comfortable silence between them, as if, for a moment, they had both forgotten their worries. Time seemed to slow down. "Do you come here often?" Chloe asked, genuinely curious. "Whenever I need to clear my mind," he replied. "It seems like the beach knows what to do with things that are out of place." Chloe smiled. Her eyes studied him with growing curiosity, feeling there was more to discover about this simple yet profound young man. "It's funny, isn't it?" she said after a moment. "The two of us here probably running from something." Ethan looked at her in surprise, feeling that she understood him more than he had expected. "I guess so. Sometimes running seems like the only solution." And so, almost instinctively, they began to walk side by side along the beach. The conversation flowed naturally, as if their souls had met before their bodies. Chloe spoke about her family's expectations, the weight of being molded for a future she didn't want. Ethan, in turn, shared his anguish over his mother's illness and the despair of not being able to help as much as he'd like. The night fell quickly, the sky tinged with stars by the time they realized how much time had passed without them noticing. "It was a different afternoon," Chloe said, smiling softly. "For me too." Ethan hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you think we could do this again? Meet again?" Chloe didn't hesitate. They exchanged numbers, and as they said goodbye, they both knew that something deep had begun. The meetings between Chloe and Ethan became frequent. With each encounter, their connection grew stronger. Chloe, used to superficial conversations and social expectations, found in Ethan a freedom she had never experienced. He treated her like an ordinary person, without the labels and judgments that surrounded her. For his part, Ethan found in Chloe a relief from the worries that consumed him. One sunny afternoon, they returned to the same beach where they had met. This time, they brought a picnic basket. Sitting on the sand, They watched the waves, the hypnotizing sound of the sea creating an intimate atmosphere. You know, sometimes I imagine what it would be like to run away, Chloe said, picking a grape from the basket. Leave everything behind and just live. No expectations, no commitments. Ethan watched her, curious. And why don't you do it? Chloe sighed, looking at the horizon. It's not that simple. My family has planned every detail of my life. Business, marriages, she paused, playing with the sand between her fingers. I just don't know how to get out of it. Ethan took a piece of bread, thoughtful. I understand. My mother also gives me a sense of responsibility. She always did so much for me, and now, with her health worsening, sometimes I feel like I'm paying back, but not living my own life. They exchanged a deep look. The similarity between their situations, even though they came from opposite worlds, was undeniable. Chloe, the rich heiress, and Ethan, the young man struggling to survive, shared the same dilemma, the weight of family expectations. You know, Chloe began, with a sad smile, I never thought I'd find someone who really understands me. Me neither, Ethan replied softly. But here we are. The silence that followed was comfortable, full of mutual understanding. Chloe, without realizing it, intertwined her fingers with Ethan's. He looked at her, surprised, but soon returned the gesture, feeling a connection beyond words. Chloe, Ethan said after a long moment, I've never met anyone like you, and somehow I feel like we found each other at the right time. Chloe turned to him, her eyes shining in the light of the stars that began to appear in the sky. Maybe that's exactly what it is, she murmured before leaning in and kissing him softly on the lips. The kiss, though brief, was profound. It was more than a romantic gesture. It was a silent promise that, no matter the obstacles, they would face whatever came together. The relationship between Chloe and Ethan blossomed quickly, but soon complications began to arise. Although the time they spent together was magical, both knew that the world around them wouldn't be as welcoming. Chloe came from a family that valued status above all else, and her parents soon began to suspect her frequent absences. The pressure for her to follow the path they had laid out for her intensified with each passing day. One night, during a dinner at her family's mansion, the tension finally erupted. Chloe sat at the long table, surrounded by uncomfortable silence. Her father, Mr. Wallace, a man of few words, watched her with penetrating eyes, as if he already knew everything. Chloe, he began, breaking the silence with his firm and controlled voice. I've heard that you're getting involved with someone. A young man from a lower class. Correct? The way he pronounced lower class made Chloe's stomach churn. She knew this conversation was coming, but she wasn't prepared for the disdain she felt in her father's words. Yes, Dad. His name is Ethan, and we've been together for a while, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady, though her heart was racing. The silence that followed was deafening. Her mother frowned, a subtle reaction, but enough for Chloe to know what she was thinking. Her father, without hiding his disdain, slowly stood up from the table, his words laced with coldness. This is unacceptable, Chloe. You have no idea what you're risking by getting involved with someone like that. Your life is planned. Your future has already been decided. You need someone who is at your level, who complements our family, not a mere laborer who will bring us shame. Chloe felt a burning anger inside her. All the love she felt for Ethan, all the freedom he gave her, was being insulted in that moment. Dad, I'm not a piece on your business chessboard, she responded, raising her voice. I love Ethan, and that's what really matters. Mr. Wallace narrowed his eyes, as if he were observing an opponent before delivering the final blow. If you continue with this young man, you can forget about any support from us. You will be disinherited. I will not allow our reputation to be stained by a childish whim. Chloe felt the weight of these words like a stone crushing her chest. She knew her family was capable of extreme measures, but she never imagined they would go this far. But at that moment, something inside her broke. She was no longer a girl scared of her parents' disapproval. She was a woman determined to live her own life. I don't care about the money, Dad. Her voice sounded firm, almost surprising herself. What I want is to live according to my own desires, and Ethan is the person I want to be with. Her father remained silent, his face hardening. He knew there was no point in arguing further. Chloe had made her decision. As she left the table that night, she was fully aware that she had just lost all the wealth and privilege that had surrounded her since birth. But for the first time in her life, she felt free. When she told Ethan about the conversation, he was in shock but also deeply moved. He knew how much this meant to her, and the last thing he wanted was for Chloe to suffer. "I don't want you to lose everything because of me, Chloe," he said, worried, holding her hands. Chloe looked at him with conviction, with a clarity in her eyes that dispelled all his doubts. "I'm not losing anything. In fact, I'm gaining. I'm gaining a life by your side, and that's all I need." And in that moment, Ethan knew that, despite everything they would face, Chloe was there to stay. Chloe's decision to distance herself from her family was final. Without the financial and emotional support of the Wallaces, she and Ethan needed to find a new way to build their lives. But together, they were determined. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they were prepared to face these challenges. One sunny morning, while Ethan and Chloe were having coffee in the small house where Ethan lived with his mother, Mary, she called them for an important conversation. Mary was visibly weaker than in the previous weeks. Her health was deteriorating rapidly, and everyone knew her time was running out. "I have something for you," Mary began, her voice low but filled with emotion. "I know you two are starting a new life, and I wanted to help." She leaned over to open a small drawer beside her bed, pulling out an old key. "What is this, Mom?" Ethan asked, taking the key carefully. Mary smiled, her eyes shining with a mix of nostalgia and affection. "This key has belonged to our family for generations. It's to an old house near the beach where you two met. It's been abandoned for a long time, but it's still ours. I think you can turn it into something beautiful." Ethan was speechless. He knew about the house's existence, but he had never considered it as an option. It was old, practically in ruins, but his mother's gesture was invaluable. Chloe, beside him, squeezed his hand, moved. "Thank you, Mary," Chloe said, her voice choked with emotion. "This means so much to us." The next day, they went to visit the house. It was exactly as Mary had described, old, crumbling in some places, with broken windows and a garden overgrown with weeds. But at the same time, there was a raw beauty in that building, a story that seemed to be waiting to be written. "This is our place," Chloe said, smiling at Ethan as they walked through the empty halls. They knew that turning that house into a home would be hard work. With limited resources, they would have to do most of the renovations themselves. But somehow, the challenge excited them. It wasn't just about the house. It was about building something together, something that belonged to them and only them. They began planning the renovations, and within days, they were already getting their hands dirty. Chloe, who had spent her life surrounded by luxury, learned to paint walls and fix windows with a joy that even surprised herself. The work was hard, but the emotional reward was immeasurable. As the house took shape, they felt that their lives were also taking shape. Every painted wall, every repair made was a step towards the life they had chosen. They knew there would be difficulties, but they also knew they had each other. And that night, as they sat in the makeshift garden, watching the sunset, Chloe turned to Ethan with a smile that spoke more than any words. "We did it, Ethan. We're building our life our way." And Ethan, looking at the woman beside him, knew that nothing in the world could take that away from them. The following weeks were exhausting. Renovating the house required much more than they had imagined. The structures were more fragile, and the repairs seemed endless. Every time they thought they had finished one part, they discovered another problem to solve. But despite everything, Ethan and Chloe remained steadfast. Chloe, who had never lifted a hammer in her life, was now learning to fix roofs and even work with plumbing. There was something liberating about it. The hard work made her feel more alive than ever. At the same time, she felt more connected to Ethan. They were both building something from scratch, something that represented more than just a house. It represented their choice of a life together. However, the burden was heavy. Mary's health continued to worsen, and Ethan divided his time between caring for his mother and working on the house. His physical and emotional exhaustion was evident. Chloe did what she could to help him, but the accumulated fatigue was taking its toll, and tensions began to surface. On a particularly difficult night, Chloe found Ethan sitting on the porch, staring out at the sea. His face was somber, his hands clasped in a gesture of frustration. Chloe approached and sat beside him, feeling the weight he carried. "Ethan," she said softly, placing her hand on his. "I know it's been tough, but we'll get through this. We're in this together," he sighed, turning to look at her with tired eyes. "I know, Chloe. It's just that sometimes it feels like everything is falling apart around us. The house, my mother, I don't know if I can handle it all." Chloe moved closer, embracing him tightly. "You're not alone, Ethan. I'm here, I always will be. And no matter what happens, we'll get through this together." The silence that followed was full of understanding. Ethan, feeling Chloe's unconditional support, squeezed her hand more tightly. They knew the road would be difficult, but they also knew that, together, they could face anything. And then, the next day, while working in one of the rooms of the house, an unexpected surprise changed everything. Ethan, while trying to remove a damaged wall, found a small wooden box hidden in a compartment. He opened it, and his eyes widened at what was inside. Old jewelry, gold coins, a fortune forgotten there for generations. Chloe entered the room just as he lifted the box, and they both stood in shock. "Ethan, what is this?" Chloe asked, unable to believe what she was seeing. "I don't know, but this could change everything for us." Ethan's voice was filled with disbelief. They knew that this discovery could solve all their problems. But at the same time, they knew they had to make a decision about what to do with this unexpected fortune. The discovery of the treasure brought a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Ethan and Chloe knew that now they had the means to finish the renovation of the house and ensure the best care for Mary. However, the weight of the moral dilemma hit them hard. That same night, sitting at the kitchen table, the silence between them was heavy. The small wooden box lay open on the table, with the jewelry and coins gleaming under the soft light of the lamp. Chloe was the first to break the silence. "What do we do now, Ethan?" she asked, looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Ethan was deep in thought, his eyes fixed on the jewelry. He knew that the money could solve many of their immediate problems, but there was something more at stake. "I think, first, we need to make sure my mother gets the best possible care. That's the most important thing," he said, his voice firm but calm. Chloe nodded, holding his hand for a moment. "I agree. But what about after that?" she asked, raising a more complex issue. "It's not just about money. This treasure, it belongs to your family. It has a meaning, a history that we need to respect." Ethan sighed, knowing Chloe was right. They couldn't just use the treasure without thinking about its value, both historical and emotional. And there was something else. The fortune could attract unwanted attention, especially from Chloe's family, who had already shown disdain for their relationship. They decided to use the money carefully. First, they ensured that Mary received the best medical care, which, although visibly weaker, was moved to know she would be surrounded by the necessary care. Chloe and Ethan also used a portion of the treasure to hire professionals to help them finish the renovation of the house. The progress was quick, and soon the old, abandoned house was transformed into a cozy and vibrant home. One afternoon, Mary, in her wheelchair, was taken to the newly renovated porch. She looked at the horizon, where the sun was setting, and silent tears streamed down her face. Ethan and Chloe were by her side, and Mary squeezed both of their hands, feeling the weight of happiness in her chest. "You did it," she said, her voice weak but full of emotion. "This house, this home, is the future I always wished for you, Ethan. And Chloe, dear, you brought light into his life. I am so grateful." Chloe, moved, gently embraced Mary. Ethan, with teary eyes, kissed his mother's forehead, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. At that moment, they knew they had created something greater than just a physical home. They had created a new life full of love, unity, and hope. However, the news about the treasure soon reached Chloe's family. Her father, especially, was shocked to learn that the simple, modest house where Chloe and Ethan had chosen to live hid a fortune in jewelry and gold. He tried several times to convince her to return to the family, claiming that this could be a sign that she should reconsider her choices. During a rare visit to the old Wallace mansion, Chloe confronted her father with maturity and determination. "Dad, I've already found what truly matters to me. It's not money nor status. It's love, it's the life I'm building with Ethan," she said with conviction. Her father, although reluctant, finally realized that there was no way to change his daughter's heart. And over time, both he and Chloe's mother accepted that their daughter's choice was final and that it made her happy. And so Ethan, Chloe, and Mary lived in peace in the house by the sea. Every night, they watched the sunset together, always remembering the beginning of their journey. The true treasure, after all, was not in the jewelry or the gold, but in the love that had united them and kept them strong, even when the world seemed to conspire against them.